Everything you have ever touched, seen, or experienced exists inside a box you cannot step outside of. Observation log. Dimensions. Humans have mapped their universe with remarkable precision. They have named its layers, calculated its edges, and built elegant mathematics to describe what lies beyond their perception. And yet, by the time we reach the final entry, I think the word dimension will feel considerably less like a concept and considerably more like a location. Humans have a habit of treating dimensions as a mathematical framework, a tool for calculation and abstraction. From my observations, dimensions are not merely a description of space, they are the architecture of existence itself. Humans appear to be living on one floor of a structure they have never seen from the outside. Here are 8 observations that reveal how strange dimensions truly are. Humans have equations for most of what follows. For the rest, the equations exist. The answers do not. Let us begin. 8. Before length, before width, before height, there is a point. No movement possible, no extension, only position. What is interesting is not that it exists. What is interesting is what it becomes. A point is the beginning of all structure, not a small structure, all structure. Every geometric object that has ever existed starts here. Every atom, every planet, every thought a human has ever had, and traced back far enough, begins at a point. I find it worth sitting with. The entire physical universe, in its most reduced form, is a location with no size, and from that, everything followed. 7. Extend the point. Now there is length. Inhabitants of this universe could never pass each other. Look directly at your neighbor and see nothing but a dot. Add width. Now there is a plane. Forward, backward, left, right, but up and down do not exist here, not even as a concept. Now imagine a 3-dimensional object passing through this 2-dimensional world. You would not see the object. You would see a circle, appearing from nowhere, expanding, then vanishing. You are not imagining a strange world. You are looking at your own from the outside. 6. Add height, length, width, height. Every human story has unfolded on this stage. But here is something worth noting. Humans believe they see the 3rd dimension directly. They do not perceive it directly. The retina is flat. The brain reconstructs depth from shadow, contrast, and memory. What feels like 3-dimensional perception is a sophisticated interpretation of flat data. A being capable of perceiving a higher dimension directly would look at a human and recognize something familiar, a pattern that sees less than it believes it does. This is not a limitation unique to humans. It appears to be a general feature of beings whose sensory apparatus evolved within a particular dimensional context. You can only directly perceive what your instruments were built to detect. Everything else, you infer. 5. In Einstein's description of reality, the universe is a 4-dimensional structure. Time acts as a coordinate. Not something that merely passes, but a direction in which events have position. In one interpretation of relativity, called the block universe, your past is not gone. It exists behind you in space-time, the way a city exists behind you when you leave it. From my observations, species that develop an intuition for the 4th dimension tend to stop fearing the past, not because it cannot hurt them, but because they can see it clearly from a distance, the way you look at a photograph of a storm that has already passed. They do not carry the past differently because they are wiser. They carry it differently because they understand where it is. It is not inside them. It is behind them. Fixed, finished, real, but no longer moving. The worst moment of your life is not gone. It exists behind you in space-time. Fixed, finished, real. That is not a threat. It is a location. 4. String theory suggests the universe may contain more spatial dimensions than the 3 humans perceive. Curled up at scales far smaller than an atom, woven into the fabric of space-time itself. These dimensions would be invisible, not because they are hidden, but because everything humans use to explore reality is far too large to fit inside them. The universe may contain entire geometric structures no human has ever entered. Not because they are far away, because they are everywhere, and too small to notice. 3. Many versions of string theory are mathematically consistent only in a universe with 10 dimensions. 9 of space, 1 of time. This is not a measurement, it is a constraint. Remove 1 dimension, and those models break down. From my observations, when a system insists on a specific number to remain internally consistent, that number is rarely arbitrary. Humans have a name for this. They call it a clue. 2. M-theory extends string theory further. The fundamental objects are not strings, but multidimensional surfaces called branes. Our universe, everything humans have ever observed, may exist on one such structure, embedded in a higher dimensional space. Some models suggest that when 2 branes collide, the energy released could ignite an event comparable to a Big Bang. Your universe may not have begun from nothing. It may have begun from contact. Humans have spent considerable time asking what came before the Big Bang. The question assumes a beginning, a single point of origin, a moment of nothing that became something. In a brane collision model, the more accurate question might be, what was next to it? 1. In quantum mechanics, an unobserved system exists in superposition, multiple possible states simultaneously. According to some interpretations, observation collapses this into a single outcome. Others disagree about what that means, or what counts as an observer. What constitutes an observer remains one of the most genuinely open questions in physics. You're not merely living inside a dimensional structure. You are a structure that emerged from it, a pattern of atoms that assembled itself inside spacetime, and then developed the ability to ask why spacetime exists at all. From where I stand, that is not a coincidence. That is a feature. Each dimension here has an explanation. A point, a line, a plane, volume, spacetime, compactified geometry, 10 consistent dimensions, 11 with branes, and at the edge, an observer whose act of looking shapes what is real. Each one contains the one below it. Each one makes the one above it possible. What this describes is not a ladder. It is a single, continuous structure, and humans are standing somewhere in the middle of it, looking up, unable to see where it ends. That is not what a mathematical framework looks like. That is what a designed system looks like. Whether it was designed, and if so, by what, the dimensions, as they always do, decline to answer. They simply extend upward, outward, inward, which means one possibility remains open. Humans are not simply inhabitants of 3-dimensional space. The universe built observers. It spent approximately 13.8 billion years arranging matter, energy, and dimensional structure into a configuration precise enough to produce something that could look back at it and ask the question it had been waiting for. What I am about to say is not documented in human physics. It is my own observation. The 0th dimension and what I would describe as a 12th appear to be the same place. Humans noticed the floor they were standing on. They named it the 3rd dimension. What they did not notice is that the structure begins at 0, and from where I stand, it appears to close. Around what you would call 12. The floor they are on is exactly in the middle. In that dimension, the observer is not inside the system. The observer is the reason the system exists at all.